This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk.
All right, we back. We better look on Tina's face. It's wonderful.
We're going to talk about that commercial.
You've seen the video of it before.
Yeah, I've seen the video before, but this is the first time I really listened to it all the way through. And
No.
Commercial placement. As
No.
Producer before I get fired again.
Yeah, no, you. Well, in that case, you're already fired because here's.
People need their equipment.
Yeah.
They
sure do. They sure
talk about
do.
your moment of bliss. You know what I'm saying?
However, as I was taking my break, right, and I was doing the break things while we was on break and getting my refill, which I haven't got to pour.
This not a family show.
It's Real Talk. We talk about all kinds of things on Real Talk. That's why when we go live, we're always 7 p.m. on. But here's kind of the wonderful thing of it for me. Like, so
I've been
as I
fired
was
a
thinking
lot,
about it,
Nicodemus, a lot.
as I was thinking about it, like before, Nicodemus, she been fired for like 74 different times. So I was thinking about in terms of even with the topic that we're going. Here's why that commercial was suited for where we're at, even in our commercial, right? Watch this. If we were a white podcast, that commercial wouldn't faze anybody. If she was a white business owner, and shout out to my friend Amanda out there in Mississippi doing her thing, they wouldn't flinch, and I can prove it. Howard Stern done these type of things forever. Nobody bats an eye. Don Imus. And I'm talking about terrestrial radio. I'm not talking about internet radio podcasts like we're doing. I'm not talking about Sirius XM or nothing like that. Don Imus did stuff like this forever. Nobody flinched. There was a radio show that's no longer on the air called Opus and Andy. I used to listen to them all the time. They were hilarious. They would do shock type of stuff like this all the time. Canceled. Nobody flinched. No, you know why they got canceled? Because they came at the Catholic Church. They did a prank at the Catholic Church in one of the
the one that did that with the couple
in New York, which is like outside of the Vatican. You don't do stuff like that at the Catholic Church in New York. That's why they were canceled. Like, it's not so when they do it, yeah. When we do it, we got to make sure you put it in the right proper place and make sure it's palatable for the people and put it here so that the things can do. And it really shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, here's what I see when I see that commercial, right? Aside from the fact that she's a good friend of ours and a good friend of and her church, shout out to Bishop Chris Chamberlain, Pastor Tashana Chamberlain out there at Greater Love Ministries out there in Union City, Mississippi. Here's what also I see. I see a business owner, a small business owner,
Black woman business owner.
Black woman trying to build her brand. So why would I relegate her commercial? If you're talking in terms of television producing, right? The prime time for a commercial spot is always the middle. Like when you're doing radio and podcasts and you're doing sponsors or whatnot, they fight for and pay big money for that middle spot, because that middle spot is when you typically have the most people. You're growing your audience in the beginning, and the audience starts to decline near the end, so they fight for that middle spot because it's the most eyes. Why would I relegate something like that? And our last sponsor is also a black woman, so I'm not no shade on Maya, who's a good friend of ours too. She's also one of our co-hosts. I alternate those two between who's middle and who's at the end. Why would I relegate her to the end consistently because of the product or because of the type of services that she offers, when, let's be frank, because this is a real talk, outside of death and trash removal, you know what business is never going to hit a recession? Sex.
Yeah.
Everybody gets sick. Everybody needs their trash cleaned up, and everybody trying to find somebody to have sex with and make their sex experience better. So, it is a profitable business. Why can't it be just as profitable for us? Why is it only? And I'm not saying that's why you said it. I know why you said it, because I know you. I understand you. But why can't it be just as profitable for us as it is for everybody else? A black woman has a sex tape, and oh my God, the world is ending. Kim Kardashian makes a multi-billion-dollar corporation off of her sex tape.
Generational wealth with that.
Like what was her
Black
name?
man.
What
Ray
was
J
her
didn't
name?
make that much off of it.
What was her name from Love and Hip Hop? The one who did it in the shower with
Mimi?
Mimi did it. Does a sex? Not that I condone sex tape. Don't get me wrong, but Mimi does a sex tape, and the world ridicules her and talks about, oh my God, the children, and what are they gonna think, and what they gonna see, and I can't believe you did this. And Kim Kardashian does one before her, and everybody's like, let's give her that money. Come on, let's go. And it was a horrible sex tape, but let's give her the money. Let's give her business. She can be legitimate, and no one ever brings it up. She has now passed. I think she's past her bar now. Is able to meet with presidents and try to affect policy change and be taken seriously. I haven't heard from Mimi since the sex tape.
No.
That's all I'm saying. So. Our topic, so that y'all who are listening in and whatnot and watching on, our topic for the second round, which I was saying kind of ties in some of the things that Eddie was talking about in the last topic, is why is it that when we do a thing, it's a bad thing, it's horrible, it's messed up, but when they, and by they I'm be specific, I mean white folks, when they do a thing, it's acceptable. We just had the NCAA women's basketball tournament and the women's basketball championship a few weeks ago. And it is still a big thing, and I wasn't going to ever talk about it, but it just would not die. Every sports channel and regular news channels I see are doing it. It has been flooding my timeline with different perspectives and whatnot. So for those of y'all who are not aware, the NCAA tournament was between LSU and Iowa. The women's basketball tournament was between those two teams. I'm not really a college basketball watcher. I love basketball, but not a college basketball watcher. And I'm sorry, call me sexist if you want. I'm definitely not really a fan of female basketball. Y'all's basketball is not really as exciting. Y'all have fundamentals. Y'all don't have excitement. If our NBA players could get y'all's fundamentals, it'd make their game much better, or y'all get their excitement, y'all's game would be much better. But that's just my own perspective. I'll leave that part alone. So, there is this white lady, her first name is Caitlin, I cannot remember what her last name is. In the game before they played LSU, their team is winning. She looks at another player and does the John Cena. You can't see me, because she's on fire. And by all accounts, Caitlin is a monster player. Like, she is a superstar in the making. And when you talk trash, you need to back it up, and she backs it up. Until she ran into this brick wall named LSU and this black woman named Angela. I think her name's Angela Reese. She and LSU stomped Iowa. It wasn't even a close game. It was a 17-point win. Angel Reese. 17-point beatdown of Iowa. And near the end of the game, when she knew that their team was up, which is when people talk the most trash, she sees Caitlin and she says to her, hey, yo, you can't see me. We get ready to put a ring on it. And the media went insane. When Caitlin does it, they make statements like, oh, look at the swagger, and she's a champion, and she's look at how she fights and how passionate she is. When Angel does it, she's a thug. She's hood, she's ghetto, it's classless, it's all this other stuff. And I have never in the history of sports in particular seen a more clear picture of the double standard that we have to live under than this. And the reason is they both did the exact same gesture. It wasn't like Caitlin did the John Cena and Angel flicked her off. No. They did the same gesture, and one is praised for it, and the other is condemned for it. Why is it, and how long are we going to have to sit under this? When y'all do it, it's great. When we do it, it's bad, and everything y'all do, y'all essentially steal from us anyway.
Well, I just want to say, you all over the place, bro. You went
Oh,
from
that's all
sex
into
to
one.
basketball, like this is love and basketball or something.
It
Uh,
all fits.
okay. But yeah, that commercial that was unexpected. But yeah, for example, if ooh we that's a hard one to kind of like tie in there. Um, I understand your perspective of being you know, African Americans do the same things as their white American counterparts and are viewed differently, or rather, they're harshly ridiculed, whereas white people for the same behavior are praised. But wow, uh, I'll use a different way than what you said, because yes, there are some studies. For example, white women were complaining that they could not climax with their husbands. So a study was conducted that the women would go to the doctor, and the doctor would have sex with them and get them to climax, to the point where the doctor got tired, because a lot of women, that's what they would go to. So the doctor created a machine that would actually perform the act instead. And what they did was their approach was clinical, and
The
but
hysteria machine.
the problem was the same. But they turn it around to black women and they say, well, they want to have sex. Black men want to have sex. They always, that's all they ever think about. They twist the narrative, and that's what we seeing all the time. Because you're a preacher, you know, ain't nothing new under the sun. The book of Ecclesiastes tell you that. So they twisting the narrative to make it seem like, and when we look at it, when we magnify it with black culture, because we don't want to think anything positive about that culture, like they have nothing positive to contribute to society. They make it a bad thing. They make it like it's dark. But when it's about them, then they say, well, it's a lucrative business. Now, this young lady, in your commercial, she may be trying to tap into what is well known to be a very lucrative business, but they'll look at her like, oh, well, she's like that one political incident where the guy was talking about a female that was in politics, and suddenly she was talking about politics, and he's talking about, well, if she had a man, well, if she wasn't a single mother, and it's like, why was all of that even relevant? So it's even gotten to the point where they have African American men doing that to their African American woman. And the reason why that's a problem is because you're conditioned in this way is not a positive thing. And instead of you turning away from it and calling it out as an African American man, as the leader of that culture, you're joining the bandwagon, and you're tearing down your own women, and that is a problem. And that's one of the things Eddie and I've talked about on a couple of occasions. When I say things like, and he calls me sexist, I say things like, the man is failing the woman because he is not being the man that God called Adam to be. And in good fashion of Adam, the same fashion that Adam did when God said, don't you leave this woman at home, this she'll help me, you take her out in the field. He was like, nah, I'm gonna leave her right here. Whatever happens, happens. And I say the first sin, as a result, I say the first sin was Adam being disobedient. But it's a perpetual thing where it's like it was here and now it's here and it keeps on going. You can see it in everything that happens. It's nothing new.
So real quick before I let you talk, Eddie, I wanna address what Eric said, because I had to make sure I looked up, because I'll be honest, I was not familiar with what he had stated.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, he said, I think a better example is the two Tennessee politicians that got expelled. And I don't think it's a better example, but I think it's in the same vein,
Yeah.
because two senators,
Three.
no, hold on, the two senators who were black senators were involved in this protest, and they were expelled from their senatorship widely. And there was a white senator who was also involved in the same gun protest.
white woman.
And she's a white woman, and she got a slap on the wrist, and they say she narrowly escaped by 1 or 2 votes. But the fact that she was able to keep her seat, period, it still further proves my point of when we do something, it's a problem. And it doesn't matter the arena, whether we're talking about sex, we're talking about sports, we're talking about our music, we're talking about politics, we're talking about business. We back in the 90s, we had I think it was Chris Rock who made the joke in the early 2000s about what was going on in the 90s. It's you could not have an album, a rap album in Walmart that contained the word gun in it. But you could sell guns to white folks. And somehow that was okay. Rap music became the catalyst and the protagonist for all of the ills in society because it's misogynistic, it degrades women, it condones violence. Meanwhile, Marilyn Manson and heavy metal have way grosser lyrics and way worse lyrics at times than what any rap song has ever had, and yet no one says anything about them. And so again, we do something, and it's bad, even though they take it from us. And once they take it from us, they do it, and yay, white folks. Eddie.
That's a lot to say. So let me try to. You make a very interesting. Let me go backwards as we go through it. You make a very interesting point about Walmart, right? Walmart did say, "Hey, you can't put this stuff in here that has guns." And had these Christian conservatives who said, "We're doing this so we can protect our children," and blah 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 blah. But they had no problems having Hank Williams, a country boy can't survive. He's talking about, how they go shoot and they do whatever, right? They had no problem with Johnny Cash, right? Who sang songs about, I killed a man, blah, blah. They had no problem with any of those things. So there was definitely a reason why wanted those raps, those gangster rap stuff out of there. One, there used to be a time where people would make their own tapes, mixtapes, and trying to put their own stuff through until you got a lot more white producers and white record executives who wanted that all the money that was coming in, then it became acceptable, right? So there's that part. Eric makes a good point, in comparative to the basketball situation and the Tennessee legislators. But I would also remind us, right, that this is not new, and this is not something that has not happened before. There are codes, right? There are codes in television, there are codes in film, there are codes in sports, and they've always been that way. If you remember the different things in football, Howard Cosell back in the 80s and the late 70s,
I was
early
going
80s,
there next, yep.
Was notorious for saying little racist things, right? Where he would call football players savages, monkeys, and things like that, right? This was not unheard of. And so it didn't matter if you got on television and you was the most nicest, kindest, silent, non-controversial black player out there. If you didn't even do trash talk, didn't matter. What it was is they had a word for you, right? He's a monster, right? He's fast. He's an animal, right? Boy, he's aggressive, right? He comes from a horrible background. He fought his way out of the inner city. All these different codes, right? Where they don't have to call you, and I'm not going to say the word, but they have to call the N-word. But they can say other things that identify you, right? To the masses that are out there who are watching the movies, who are watching the TV show, right? That's your code word, right? Oh, she's always been controversial. Oh, she's a thug, right? All of these things, right? She acts like a criminal. He acts like a criminal. But there's something else we should remember that I want to caveat with that is it is until they get paid. Once they find a way to market it, it ain't an issue no more, right? To them, because somebody's getting paid for it. I give an example. Years ago, the racist coach, Bear Bryant, right? He was for the University of Alabama. Bear Bryant went out and told people when all of the teams were starting to integrate in sports, he went out there and told them, I will never, ever let a N-word play on my team. And everybody, because he was in Alabama now, segregation today, tomorrow, and forever. But once he started losing to them black teams that black people on it, what did Bear Bryant do? He started bringing them in. And then all them segregationists that had been real big fans of Bear Bryant and made him a legend was like, wait a minute, man. Why you let these you said we wasn't going to let these Negroes play on the team. And he said, well, I want to win, right? So it comes down to that. She's a thug. She a criminal. She whatever. You saw Biden's wife, Dr. Biden got up there and said, let's let everybody come to the White House.
That was legitimately going to be my next point with that, where the White House has gotten involved in this LSU. Well, the White House adjacent has gotten involved in this LSU Iowa controversy, and said, because Iowa played so hard, I think we should just invite both teams up to go ahead and come to the White House. And I was listening to Shannon Sharp on First Take, not First Take, Undisputed on whatever network he on Fox something network, and him and Skip Bayless were talking about her statement, and he raised a question that I immediately thought about, but I didn't have the words to articulate the way he did. He basically said this. He said, so first of all, when has the First Lady ever been involved in calling up a team and inviting a team to come to the White House? Second of all, if these had been two black players, would they be talking about inviting the losing team up? And thirdly, are you going to, with this invitation, invite every runner up to the White House? Because if you don't, it's a real bad look that the issue is this poor little white girl got her feelings hurt because she lost to the better black girl. And to Caitlin's defense, she was like, this is basketball. That's what we do in basketball. We talk trash. And she just happened to talk better trash than me, one, because I talk trash too. And so she had no problem with it. But everybody who came to the defense of this poor, fragile little white girl who can't help but have her feelings hurt when some big, mean black girl decides to talk trash.
Larry Bird used to talk trash. Larry Bird talk trash back in time?
He's one of the all-time greatest trash talkers in the history of basketball.
And they've done documentaries. They've talked about it. There was never an issue. You hit the point right there. The issue with that was a white young girl, and I mean no offense to any white viewer on here or who sees this, but there is a history of white girl tears, and they've weaponized.
That's one of your favorite statements. Philanda loves that statement. She calls it white girl. Here come the white girl tears.
They cry. They have videos out with them crying and looking sad and looking scared and then smiling after it. Whole towns, men, women, and children have been killed because of white girl tears that were not true. Yeah, so it's a reality that they felt like they had to come to her, and what it really is a disguise for their racism. That's all it is. It's just something you can't call me racist. I was coming to her defense. No, she didn't ask you to come to her defense, right? You just decided you wanted to tear this black girl down because you saw her. She's a braggart. Right? Remember when I had the boys watch a documentary. What's the name of that documentary? It's about Jack Johnson. My unforgivable blackness. And after Jack Johnson won, right, and beat beat these white men, and he won heavyweight champion, the first black major heavyweight champion of the world. They put out things in the paper saying, Negroes, don't get too excited. Don't get too caught in yourselves. And they went out and got the great white hopes, and they got them to fight until Paul Jack Johnson basically, it could be argued, basically said, hey, you can have this title. It ain't worth my life, bruh. So it's something that they do. It was because it was that young white girl. But this is something, yeah, you're right. There was a NAACP back in the late 60s, early 70s called the Two Americas. We live in two Americas, right? For them and for us. And people, that don't exist anymore. But they show you every day that some people do believe that it exists with their privilege.
And to pepper just a little more, the LSU team was predominantly all black. And the starters, all 5, were black. Meanwhile, the Iowa team was predominantly a white team and had all white players starting. And so again, we come into the aid of these young white girls and this one young white superstar who got beat badly by her LSU rival. And it was like, and the things that they said about this young black girl, when I tell you my blood boiled as a result of it, I'm like, this is just horrible. Yeah, the professionals that get paid to be pundits and talk about sports and write about sports. She's hood, she's ghetto, she's trashy, they called her everything but a black B and a black N-word, like for real. And I'm like, this is just horrific for the exact same motion. And again, like I said, it expands beyond just that moment, but that is just another kind of a wake-up call to it. Like, for me, and this is just my personal opinion, for me, it has not been that egregious since Elvis. Elvis was swaying his hips, and every woman was swooning. It was great. But he stole it from black folk who were called the devil for doing it.
Rock music came from us. That's us. That whole style of music, that whole genre. But
Belinda, your mic is off.
Oh, my mic off?
Here, hold on. Let's switch for a second. That way I can.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
okay, is that better? I'm back.
It's better.
Okay. Yeah, that whole style of music, rock music, came from us. It originated with Chuck Berry. He literally mimicked everything that he had saw Chuck Berry do, and then he marketed it.
That's right.
But they've been doing this for ages. Like, none of this is new. And I appreciate it, and I know I'm a Gen Xer, but I appreciate the Gen Z generation for saying enough is enough, that this is trash. Like, we can't keep going on like this. Like, the young people who were protesting in Memphis when those legislators got expelled were all young people. They're the people who it affects the most. They were school-age children who want gun reform. They want to feel safe going to a school. They don't want to have to be locked down. They don't want there to have to be metal detectors. They want people to have more accountability for purchasing the guns so that stuff like that don't happen. They organized that protest. They showed up at the White House. And the 3 politicians who were like, I agree with what they're saying because it's not about us. None of us are in school. They're in school. And they just want to be safe. That's it. Those kids just want to be safe. This affects them literally. Their lives are on the line going to school. When people started homeschooling their kids, I was like, I don't know about that. We're putting teachers out. But the simple fact that these kids realize I could go to school and die because they're feeling unsafe. These were the people. But every single time that we do a thing, they think that we're angry or that we're that we should be disqualified because of the color of our skin or our socioeconomic background that we come from. And really, as the case is, you're just mad because you didn't come up with it first. Why is Cardi B, who is Latina and Black, Latina X, Afro Latina X, why is she a thought or a trash? And she a married woman just like Kim Kardashian. Actually, has been married longer than Kim Kardashian, and Kim Kardashian do the same thing. But she's uneducated. She's trash. She's this, and it's okay for Kim Kardashian. We are finally getting to a generation where this is no longer acceptable. It's not acceptable. You can't treat us any old kind of way. You can't tell us what to think. You can't tell us how to live our lives. Recognize us for who we are. We've been recognizing you this whole time for generations. Ain't nobody said nothing about how we have wrongly placed Christopher Columbus as being the discoverer of America. We let that go for years. We taught it wrong in our homes until we knew better. But the minute we say something about it, it's a problem. And I'm glad that enough people are finally realizing that's the problem. That's the problem. As much as this country is so touted on and acknowledged, and people want to come here, when they get here, they find out differently, that there are all these freedoms here. It's the same thing that they try to squash, but in us. It's us people of color. It's free for you. You want it to be okay for you, but it can't be for everybody. Even though the people who wrote the constitutions, the people who were also slaveholders, they the one wrote in there, it should be for all of us. And now they're trying to make laws to repeal that stuff back. It's ridiculous.
But you know what, sis? It's this, not to cut you off, but it's the matter that a lot of African American people feel like, well, I ain't gonna say nothing. I ain't gonna participate in the study. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. So their voices aren't being heard, and it's a repetitive system. And I hate that word system because they push that idea out there with voting, with studies, with censors, with when they take the census and they saying, well, how many people live here, so that they can use that as a catalyst to make the changes that we would like to see. And when they have these, the academia fighting against practitioner in order for them to actually implement the changes that we would like to all see implemented, and then they use all of these things that say, well, y'all should say something. Well, y'all should say something. Give them 5 minutes. This is the thing that I've seen said. Give black people a little bit of time, they'll forget about why they were sitting there protesting, or why they were sitting there fighting, or why they were sitting there saying they can't do this or that, the other, and it'll go away without us even having to address it. And yes, surely enough, we stop giving it that steam and that power, because there's something else so much bigger that comes along, and we're like, okay, we gotta address this, when we really need to just stay a stickler and add to what's going on, instead of saying, okay, well, now we got to drop this and go to that. Well, we can't go to schools, so let's address gun violence. Well, we got to stop now addressing bullying in school, and address this. Well, really, these things are compounded and they are related, but they say, well, you can only address one problem at a time. Says who? You can only have one career in a lifetime. Says who? We need to stop in that conditional thinking that we have to listen to what they say as if we're fitting into that square peg, and we do not. We need to be able to say, okay, look, I don't like this, and you can't tell me I can't say that along with this. We're going to address all of it holistically. And that's why a lot of times on my show, I say things like holistic, because we need to stop looking at it as compartments and compartmentalizing everything as if that's going to help. It's not going to help anything. It's going to cause more problems. And we're going to be looking like, well, why is it still a problem? Well, it's still a problem because we didn't address it holistically. We don't want to just feel safe at schools because there's no bullying. We want to feel safe at schools because there's no teachers bullying, there's no students bullying, there's no guns in the schools, that people acting like they know what they're doing, they certified to teach, and they're teaching properly. They know how to lead, you have the leaders in their perspective and the qualified teachers in theirs. It's like you keep coming back to the table with the same problem, and they think that you're not aware. This is the same problem. You're aware, but you got to point it out and take it up the chain of command that you know that this is the same problem, and they playing you for an idiot. Like you don't know if this is the same problem, but you're addressing it in a different way. Like, no, we're not gonna keep doing this. We're not gonna keep going over this song and dance. Just like they was trying to take women's rights away from them and say, oh, okay, but we did that. So they like, we're not doing that anymore because we've been there, done that. So they're basically acknowledging we're not here to move that. It's not and pack and repackage it. It's to say that, oh, we've acknowledged it. And so we're like, no, we're not doing that. I don't care what you say. And that's how we have to be moving forward with everything. We have to call it out and say, nope, that's the same thing, different package. Nope, we are addressing the same thing, even though you have a different approach. This is the same thing. So that we just need to focus on recognizing what they're doing, following what they're doing, because that's within the legal ramifications according to the presentation, and then modifying it to suit whatever it is that we're trying to present in our way. Because you said we're originators, we're creative thinkers, and we originate these ideas. So we have to continue to stay within the boundaries of presentation and expectation. Let them know that this is what to expect. Give it to them and follow through with it. But yeah, that's from my observations. This is what I have seen that works, and this is what I do when I'm trying to do exactly what you all are saying. Present the same thing, but I'm just African American. I'm doing exactly the same thing somebody else has done, or somebody who is also African American or African, but I'm trying to do the same exact thing, but you're trying to block me just because, well, I'm African American and you're not happy with that. We just got to keep pushing and taking it up the chain of command, especially when it comes to the law or even in business. Because one time Eric asked about business. Even in business, you have to, this is the method, this is the model to follow. There's no manuscript, but if you're paying attention, I might just, you might find yourself looking up one day and see that manuscript and Dr. Tina Phillips on the name on that book. But this is the way.
You're muted, Eddie.
Eric has been asking this question for 2 days, off and on. I've been saying it off and on all over the line. So if Eric, you still have, you've been asking me how would I answer this question. So I'm gonna ask you this question. I'm gonna answer it about the Tennessee. When I saw that thing for Tennessee, I look at it completely different than probably any of y'all that are watching or anybody that sees it. Because immediately when I saw that, I thought about 1892 as a historian. If you don't know what happened in March 1892, there's a woman named Ida B. Wells. You probably do know her name. She had a good friend, right? Mr. Mose, right? He owned a store, it was the People's Grocery in Tennessee. And if you don't know what happened with the People's Grocery, it's one of the things that they don't teach us in our history classes. Mr. Mose opened up a grocery store, a successful grocery store. He was a black man. He employed all black people. One day in front of his store, two young kids got into an argument playing marbles, a white boy and a black boy, two young 7, 8-year-old kids. The white boy decided he was going to beat up on the black boy, right? The black boy turned around and beat the hell out of the white boy. One of the clerks at the store came out and broke it up, right? He didn't let the white boy get beat up. But a jealous grocer who had a smaller store, white man, right, got upset, caused a mob, and went and approached the store, Mr. Moles, the store, the People's Grocery, because he was jealous, because how dare this Negro, right? These Negroes, they getting so full of themselves that they allowed them to beat on this little white boy, even though a black man saved the little white boy from what he deserved, right? And they tried to go destroy the store. They pulled a gun on him. One of the black men, not Mr. Mose, he wasn't even there, he was the owner, stopped him, slapped the gun out of the man's hand, right? Beat him up. So they locked all of these black dudes up, right? Clerks. They let them out. They felt we got to go get guns. This is how this applies to guns, right? In Tennessee. So the black men feeling that, wait a minute, They got mobs here coming out here. We need to be armed. So they went and got guns for the store, not to go out to go kill anybody willingly, to protect themselves. The white grocer came back with the police members who were Klan members. They started firing in the store. The black men started firing back. Some people got wounded, but they didn't die. They locked the black men up again. The fear that these black men who had just defended themselves with this gun right, the fact of owning guns, they went and pulled these black men after they had been unarmed out of the jail, pulled them to the railroad tracks outside of the city, shot them in the face and in the hands, and killed Mr. Mose, who wasn't even involved. And so they murdered them. We know how it was all done because the press and the police were there watching the murders and gave testimony of everything that happened. When you live in a state that has that history, that is the foundation of Klan, that's a different thing when we're talking about gun rights, because I don't know when one of you crazy racist white folks are going to run into this school and shoot up the school just because you're angry. And for black men to stand up and segment women to stand up and say, hey, black children to stand up and say, along with whites, we don't want this. This is the reason why they don't teach you your history. This is the reason why we can't even talk about it. When Ida B. Wells talked about it, Ida B. Wells came to Chicago. She had to leave Tennessee, had to leave the South because they threatened to kill her because she spoke out about what they did. It is the reason why Ida B. Wells went and wrote the Red Record. It is the reason why she's known for documenting all of the lynchings that were going on in the country for the better part of 10 years. We have to know these things and we have to learn these things, because if we don't, we fall into the trap of what we're seeing right now. I saw one of the black guys get up there and he let them know. We know why you did it. We know why you're stifling us. We know our history. We know who we are. And as black people, we got to get better about that. I agree with you 100%, Tina. We have to get better about that. We have to talk about that. I agree with what you said. A lot of these kids are out there talking about that. They're telling you, we're not going to have this. We're not going to repeat this. And it's the reason why it's so important for us to educate, teach what we're talking about tonight, to have these conversations so that you who are watching can go read on the People's Grocery. You can go look at what happened in Memphis and Tennessee. You can go look why this is not just an isolated situation. Right? And because once we do that, then we can start to form in a plan to stop it from ever happening again.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact. That is an absolute fact. Can y'all hear me? She said she don't think she can hear me. Can y'all hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. Yeah, they said hear me. Yeah. Okay. As you were talking, because my mind is weird, and I recognize my mind is weird. There's a movie called Class Act that comes to mind as you were talking, and there's a scene early in the movie where it is Kid was the light skinned one, right? Okay, yeah, Kid is he is misplaced into a, let's say, slower class. I'll just put it nicely. When he is an advanced student and has all these thugs and black people who are misunderstood and a whole bunch of N-words and a whole bunch of stuff. You know, when you think of hood, the stereotypical stuff you think of when you think of hood folk. They're all in this class. And the teacher tries to come in and begins to make a statement, but no one can hear him because the class is being so rowdy. And the big dude with all these muscles stands up and tells everybody to shut up. And he looks at the teacher and says, "You teach. Reading is fundamental." And the teacher goes, "Yeah, reading is fundamental," begins to teach. That statement, as you were talking, just began to ring through my head. Reading is fundamental. We are at a point right now where when you're talking about putting things in historical context, we're at a point right now where literally everything's at your fingertips. All you have to do is have some kind of internet connection and a desire to look it up, and an understanding as how to kind of sift through some of the garbage to find what's truth. And really, even if you go into the garbage, if you know how to read, they accidentally oftentimes reference what is true in their garbage. And so you then find the truth by reading even some of the garbage so that you can understand why things are the way they are, what things have worked and that they try to quash, and that we need to try again in greater measure with greater unity. What my boy Marcus I was telling y'all about earlier, who is the host of Correct Me If I'm Wrong podcast, he and I got into a discussion on his podcast. Excuse me, on his it was on Facebook, not on his podcast, and then we called each other and talked. Where the discussion was, do we need power or do we need money? And I kept telling him, it's not money that we need. It's power, because if you have enough power, money will come. No, we need the money because we need to have this so we could do that, so we could do that. I said, but you don't understand. We had money. Black Wall Street was a thing. And power came along and wiped them out. And Black Wall Street ain't the only one. Black Wall Street is just now the more famous one, especially thanks to the show The Watchmen that Regina King directed on HBO Max. Like that's the reason most people even really know now about Black Wall Street. But there's like several others.
Seneca Village, Otisville, which is now Lake, whatever Lake.
I forget what the lake is. Yeah.
Yeah, the one we don't swim in. Like,
There are tons of examples of where
Yolanda, your
affluent
mic
black
is
people.
not working.
again,
You can't hear because I just replaced the battery. Hold on, put it up there. Talk it up. Well, say something now.
testing 1 2 testing.
Check your on. Make sure it's all the way on.
Oh, there it is.
Her mic wasn't even on. That's why
I'm
she
sorry.
had turned it off. Here, hold on, I'm gonna help y'all because maybe it's your bosoms that's turning it off. We're gonna turn it that way. There you go.
Okay,
All
is that
right,
better?
there we
Okay,
go.
sorry.
Now, what'd you say, bosom buddy?
No, like it's many villages. Like it's for if we go back throughout history, there were many times where we practiced the belief of our own economics, creating our own socioeconomic systems. But they get afraid of that the same way that they were afraid of that grocery store because it was more profitable, and they destroy us. And we have to get to the point where we have to, unfortunately, we still in an age where we have to deal with that, endure it, and keep going, keep trying, keep building, keep going. We have to keep practicing that endurance, because without that, we won't succeed. Eric has a point about that. They're trying to ban books. They're censoring stuff right and left now. But I believe that's because the fault that we have left that to the teachers in the school and stopped doing what we used to do, which was to teach it ourselves. I didn't hear about Emmett Till for the first time in no book. I heard it from my grandmother, because my grandma grew up near Money, Mississippi. She told me that she knew him. She knew the family. She was present. My mom was born the same year he was unalived, for the censors of Facebook. But we have gotten so far away from knowing that this is not just black history. This is our history. We come from that. Like, I had no problem with it. I know it was an uncomfortable conversation with having this conversation with my daughter and her white fiance. I'm like, just so you understand where we coming from, because now you're a part of our family, and everybody is not going to be okay with it right out of the gate. But I'm going to tell you why. I don't want you to go in and thinking that this is a black or a white thing. I'm telling you, this is our history. We come from the South. We've endured slavery. We have endured everything, sharecropping, everything that has gone with that. So I'm saying that this is not about the color of your skin or them just not disliking you. This is trauma. We have endured some stuff, and there's certain things that are just not going to be okay. Yeah, you and our daughter and her fiance met up at this little bar here in Georgia, where they had a Confederate flag on the wall. And when Ashley showed me the video of their little first date, I was like, oh, that's so cute. And then I had to have the uncomfortable conversation about what that flag meant and what it represented for our people. And I had to have that, unfortunately, have that conversation with Jake. I'm like, look, He was like, "Oh yeah, we can all go there. I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with this. And is this the mentality of the people that you are around? Because that may pose a problem." And for whatever reason, I don't know who talked to who about it. This bar ended up removing that flag. I'm like, it's no disrespect to you. Do what you do. But I'm telling you, I just need to know if your mentality is that this is represent who you are as a person. Let me know up front. If you hate me because of the color of my skin and you can't get that won't give you an opportunity to get to know me, let me know up front.
But I think that's actually something that you said to me, or not to me, but just in this conversation. It sparked something in me. You know how sometimes it hits and I get that little twinge in my stomach. I got that little twinge in my stomach with something that you said, and as you were talking, I just kept hearing the statement I'm getting ready to make just rehearsed. I have never heard anybody that I know of say it, but it was just being rehearsed in my own ear. It is part of the problem is that we have allowed them to call it Black history instead of history. Because the moment they were allowed to segregate the history is the moment, much like with us in slavery, they were able to invalidate us. The reason that they can go ahead and say, as Eric is talking about, they're trying to ban critical race theory in schools, and it's already banned in most states.
Call it critical race theory. We're not criticizing you,
but we're allowing it.
This is what it was.
But we're allowing it, and the reason that they can call it that is because we have allowed them to say this is Black history. Don't get me wrong. We need the month. We need the month right now. We
need more than that.
We need way more now. But since all we got right now is the month, we need the month for what it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we don't. But the moment we start allowing them to segregate it from history and say it's not a part of history, let me put it like this. I have yet to hear Italian American history. I've yet to hear Scottish American history. I've yet to hear Caucasian history. It's just called history. Or if they want to put a qualifier or a descriptor on it, they call it American history, and ours is Black history, as if we're not Americans,
like
as if we're not the ones who have built this country, and they would not have a history if it was not for our history. And so because we allow them to segregate that, it allows them to make our history inferior. And if our history is inferior because that's where we come from, then we who are the product of where we come from become inferior. And so stealing from us, and I'll call it just what it is, stealing from us becomes acceptable because you're inferior. I've never seen anybody get upset when the owner of the dog takes the food away from the dog. Ain't nobody ever in the history of life gotten upset about that. It just happens. You've had enough to eat, give me your food. I'm going to put it up where you can't get it, and you're only allowed to get the food when I want you to have the food. Nobody gets mad about that. Why? Because we look at the dog as an inferior creation. That's the same way, and even less than they look at us. But I oftentimes kind of blame us because we continue to allow it. And to Tina's point where she was talking about we need to move things up the ladder, the thing that I think is pertinent to really recognize with trying to move things up the ladder is that we historically have a lack of patience when it comes for that. So we don't, and this is because, again, we don't believe that reading is fundamental, stereotypically and historically. And that has a whole lot to do with we weren't allowed to read and all that type of stuff. I get it. But because of all that, reading has not been the most important to a vast majority of our people. And so we don't understand that there is a process to these things. You can, for lack of a better term, complain about it today. And if you are consistent in your complaint, you'll see change happen 10 years from now.
It's the Grand Canyon effect. Sometimes
Yes.
you just got to keep dripping at it. Look, the whole Grand Canyon was created the way it is by water, but it was slow and it was progressive and it just kept happening over time. The problem with us, and this is an us thing, we are not consistent with applying that pressure over time. The reason stuff keeps happening, the reason they keep overturning all these laws is because we have not consistently kept pressure up over time.
Because we
We don't know movement.
it's
We've
literally
lost.
because we've never been taught it's a process. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, we don't know movement.
Go
They'll
ahead,
still
Eddie.
see the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that Dr. King led, that Tina's uncle was a part of, Fred Shuttlesworth was a part of. Uh, they understood. They understood movement, and that hasn't been passed down. Unfortunately, we have the King Center, we have all this, but we don't know movement. We think that movement is getting out there with signs and screaming for something, and they get tired of us, and we go home, and then the issue is gone. And we see this play over and over and over and over again. We have lost our understanding of movement. Movement meant that I am going to go to the city officials, like in the Birmingham campaign. I'm going to go to the city officials and I'm going to tell them, listen, we want equal status on this bus. That's what they did, right? We don't want to be sitting in the back. We pay our fare, and more of us ride this bus than anybody. And they're going to tell you no, right? Because that's what they did. And then they say, okay, let's compromise. Maybe you can let us do this and this. And they say no. Now, the move happens is when I say, okay, since you don't want to even compromise, even work with me, nobody rides the bus, right? None of us are going to ride. And they say, oh, well, okay, whatever. And like you just said, Flana, then they were consistent about it. For over a year, nobody rode the bus. But the white women still needed somebody to come be maids in their homes. The businesses downtown, right, needed black folks to come down there and buy their items. And so when it became a financial burden on the city, the White Citizens Council and the racists decided, hey, you know what? If all they want is just to be treated equally on the bus, we got to do that because I'm losing money. I got to pay for my house. I got to pay for my family to eat. I can't do that. I initially thought I could just bully them into doing something. I can't do that. And what we've now done, we don't do that. We get out there. I tell Tina, it angers me. I want you to remember the names of the victims. I want you to go out there and protest. But I also want you to go out there with a plan. Because if
That's
we go
it.
out there and start screaming that somebody's name, we're not doing that person any service. There is no more courageous person in the history of America than Mama Till. I've said this many times because Mama Till saw something beyond herself. She said, wait a minute. They killed my son. They destroyed him. They murdered him. They savaged him. And they want me to put him in the ground and pretend it didn't happen. To hell with that. You gonna see it. You're gonna document it. And it might cause me pain to see my child like this. But everybody in this country will remember my son. And I'm going to show you what he looked like and what you did to him. And that is catalyst of the civil rights movement. That is what stirred white folks in the North who have been living in a
bubble.
this doesn't happen. Bubble, right? They saw that and went, what? That's a child. Right? Your humanity cries out for it. And that's what we got to get to. We got to give them some things. Look, people hate when I say it, but I'm going to be honest with you. But all the mass shootings and things that go on, you know what they don't show? They don't show those bodies and what they look like and what them guns do to these people. And they don't show it because they don't want Americans, even those who own guns, to say, no, we got to stop this. Right?
To prove you.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I will say real quick. I'm sorry to prove your point. In that, for those who don't recognize the history of this, let me give you something more modern and something more that is in your face with it. That proves his point. That it is the visual that oftentimes causes us to action. There's a football player by the name of Ray Rice. He and his then fiance,
Now
wife, got into what was labeled a disagreement, a domestic dispute, if you will, getting onto an elevator. They got onto the elevator, and an altercation happened, and it said that she spit on him. I don't know. All I do know is he knocked her silly. One good Mike Tyson right hook later, she's on the floor. He's holding a purse and a flip-flop and walks off the elevator as the bellhop is looking like, oh my God, what happened? Now, when the story first broke and everybody heard about it, it was, oh my God, this is horrible, but stuff happens. And even Ray Rice had talked to the NFL, was like, yeah, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad, it just happened. And then the video broke out, and we saw the furious violence of that hit. And it turned everyone's stomach and changed everyone's perspective to the point where people were saying to themselves and saying out loud as pundits, oh my God, there is no reason that it should have taken this video for me to react the way I'm reacting right now, but I can't unsee what I saw. Ray Rice, to the best of my recollection, ain't played ball since. Because as soon as the video broke out, the NFL, who was getting ready to be okay with just a short suspension, was like, nope. Teams who were getting ready to pick him up were like, nope. All because the power of seeing the effect of the offense. You're right. It's strategic that they don't show these bodies. It's strategic that even if they show the shot, they don't show the aftermath. It's strategic because if they can just keep it localized, as Tina said earlier, what winds up happening has been our history. It becomes the flavor of the month. I promise you, I used that very statement back when what was
George Floyd.
What's his name? The Skittles and the tea. It's been so doggone many. I cannot remember his name now. Trayvon Martin. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to the Martin family. I could not remember his name. I'm just so many of them.
It's so
But
much
I said to my wife in my circle, I said, this is going to be something that I really can't say publicly right now because folk will crucify me for it, but this is the flavor of the month. I said, I give it 3 months before you don't hear his name again. And sure enough, 2.5 months later, we stopped saying his name. We stopped mentioning it. We stopped referencing it. And the only time he began to come back up in the news again was when what's the idiot's name who killed Zimmerman started being stupid and doing dumb stuff like trying to sell the gun and all this other stuff, and it stirred the feelings back up again. But it's because no one saw what Trayvon looked like after. And a matter of fact, the visual that the media put out there while it was going on was he's a little thug too. So all we saw were images of this high school graduate who was basically with honors being portrayed as a thug.
But that's why they do that. It's all about the imagery. Like if you can sell that this is a negative reflection of this society, then this is what people are gonna go with. I pray that we don't have to keep going through this with the school shootings, but Eddie, you have a point. I need at least one of these parents of one of these children who are unalived in these school shootings to not show photos of them with their cute little face in their school photos, but to show the coroner's photo. Show the coroner's photo. Because people don't want to believe that it's real, that their little 6, 7, and 8-year-old bodies can be riddled by these AR semi-automatic weapons that they don't even hunt with. They're not even good enough to hunt animals with. Because you will destroy the meat. It's unedible if you shoot them up with a semi-automatic weapon.
Yep.
But it's okay for you to carry this in your house to kill people with. Stop showing. There was this website a long time ago, and I don't even believe it exists, that all they did was show the coroner's photos from famous dead celebrities. It's the first place I saw what Tupac looked like, what Biggie looked like, what JFK looked like, what Abraham Lincoln looked like on the slab. When you start to show these photos of people who have been victims of gun violence, you start to rethink these things. Because it's different when you don't know what the actual effects. When you do it to pigs or you do it to like jelly, those weird jelly forms that they use now. It's when it's an actual human being that lived, breathed, and died.
You know what?
It's
I think
different.
the
It
reason why
hits
they don't
different.
show it is because they don't want to desensitize people from the actuality of the.
But we're already desensitized,
We
and that
already
becomes the problem.
But
desensitized.
So
if
I
you were to
really
see
think
the body and become accustomed to seeing it,
But
like, oh, it's
I
another
don't know
dead body.
anybody, Ted. I don't know anybody that would be accustomed to seeing a 6-year-old child below half. If you are comfortable with that, and I'm gonna give you a
There's
historical
something
fact of
wrong with
why
you.
it's when the war in Vietnam happened. What started to turn the war, right? The Americans against the war was when they started to see the atrocity that some of these rogue soldiers were doing in Vietnam to these people. And so there is what turned a lot of people in the world. Eisenhower, when they went after World War II, when they went to go look at the concentration camps and see the people who were in there, skin and bones, who were still alive, and they saw bodies laying on top of bodies. Eisenhower had soldiers who fly in and advisors to come in and film and see these bodies because they wanted to push the point that this is what we are fighting against. So
But look at
bodies,
Ukraine. Look at Ukraine. They're showing that the kids, those babies, are lying there dead. They're showing that, and it's like people are still like, oh well, it's another dead body, and
no,
that
no.
I think
So
that that's one of the reasons why they don't frequently do that. I don't know. I'm
no,
not. I'm just guessing.
no. So what they're doing with the things in Ukraine is they're still showing a uh,
Censored.
washed down, censored, revised kind of picture of it. If people typically, and I'm gonna make a parallel that's not apples to apples, but it's still parallel, and it makes, I believe it makes the point. More people turn to be vegetarians and vegans because they see what actually happens to the animals
That
and
McDonald's
turn them,
documentary.
as opposed to people turning because of health
it's true.
reasons.
It's true.
If you see a pig slaughter and it will stop you from eating the meat that you have been eating since you were a kid, if that will turn you, then why wouldn't a dead child turn you? Why wouldn't a black person with their back blown out from the gun of a police officer, or the part of the reason that Rodney King was able to get the money he got was not the video, not just the video, but the picture of what he looked like after they beat the fool out of him. The reason people are still to this day so upset at Chris Brown for him beating up Rihanna isn't because Rihanna's a megastar, and she is, but they are so upset because
It
we
was the
saw the
pumpkin head.
picture of what she looked like after he got done. Like it is very true, the statement, a picture is worth 1,000 words. If we begin to show the thing, and then the thing I think that you said the best, at least for me, Eddie, is have a plan. The screaming, the yelling, the drawing attention to is needed, but once you get attention to it, what are you gonna do?
What's your plan?
And then have the understanding it's going to take time. Let me get this last parallel, then we're going to take our quick break because I'm looking at the time. Oh, yeah, oh, wait, looks like I can't. Give me a second. I got to fix our computer issue that just hit, and now my wife will go talk for a second, or y'all can talk for a second while I fix this computer issue
What were you
Yeah,
gonna
again.
say,
that's
Eddie?
follow through because, like I said, they wait for us to not be so involved, wait for it to lose steam, and then they move on to something else. But yeah, I like how hey Janelle, hey and I like the way Eric has said over here that we already are desensitizing by the language, and that's
Mm-hmm.
true. So I think they're trying not to desensitize using visuals because yeah, I think it kind of will. Hey Ty and academics, you're right. These are facts. These are facts.
You have to make things real to people. And I think we fail a lot of times to connect and make things. Philada talked earlier about the Confederate flag, right? And one of the things I used to tell people about the Confederate, because I have friends who are from the South, and, you know, uh, always ask me about, well, what's your issue? How do you feel about the Confederate flag? And I would always break it down to them in a very, very poignant way. My whole thing to them was that you have to look at it in the way that we see it, right? And they say, well, y'all wasn't even around, man. You wasn't around when the Civil War happened. And I said, okay, that's a good point. But let me ask you this question. And I say, before you were born, right? How would you feel if somebody killed grandparents and put them in servitude? What if somebody came and hit your mama with rocks, kicked your father down, killed your brother? What if somebody kidnapped, murdered, or lynched your cousins, right? And then they beat your uncle just because he was looking hard at as he walked past? How about this? What if they burned down your entire community and y'all had to rebuild? What if they stole your family's business, they farm, their property? If all of that happened, right? And then you weren't born, right? But after all that had been done, right, and all of these atrocities that happened, let you be born, and you come up, and you put a flag of your family, the ones who did this, right? And you put that flag on that property. Do you not think that the people who lived through all that, their families went through that, they don't have the right to tell you, get that damn flag off my property? They have the right because they went through the atrocity. But we have to make real for people. Oh, you talking about the slats?
Oh, you started breaking up, sir.
You talking about the slats and the dehumanization? I see what Eric is putting here. So, yeah, when we kill people in the military, that's a desensitized language, right? And that language was made on purpose because we don't want to show you that when we shoot a missile, that there might be women and children or innocents who get killed in that process. We don't want to talk about that. So we have to make it seem like, well, we got an insurgent, right? And there were several suspects, right? And we talk
that
around.
innocence. When you said the innocence, they quickly stopped saying that one. I remember when they used to say that.
It's like with friendly fire, right? What is friendly fire? There's no such thing as friendly fire. You know me, huh? How is that friendly? That of all of the statements but these are military statements that people make to make them feel better about what's going on.
And Teddy makes a good point. There was a time when they did show Trayvon Martin's body before they put the tarp on.
No, I because I let my son see the picture with the coat pulled over his head. And I let my son see that because I need young black men to understand that only for the grace and the mercy of God, right, that could any of us laid on that ground. And when I heard Trayvon Martin screaming for his life and Zimmerman live court said that was me screaming, but I could hear that young boy screaming after you done shot him. It's just evil that we deal with and that we're seeing. And again, I always say this, and I'm going to say it again, it'll be my last time talking about it. We got to give much more credit to Mama Till.
That's a fact.
That's some strength that is out of this world to let the world see your baby like that.
Because that, Philanda, that definitely is the picture that has to circulate. We're seeing closed caskets. Open them up.
Yeah.
Open them up.
You know, just what y'all asked about, somebody asked earlier, and I was sitting there thinking about that. I had wrote down a while back. I went through some things that I thought that we should be doing to teach our people and to help our people better understand about this movement, about these families. How do we help each other? And one of the things I wrote down some slots, right? We need to teach our children, us, our spirituality, right? Notice I didn't say to be Christian, but spirituality, right? We need to be teaching our kids about racism. We need to get into discussions about this and arguments about this. Everything that has happened in this country. I went through a book recently on one of the shows and showed you every document that was written, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, always has something about black people. We are a catalyst of whatever that document was written for, right?
Yep.
And we need to know that. We need to know about our history, spirituality, racism, history. We need to learn about time management. Stop with the whole we owe black folks time, right? We need to learn about the talents that we have and identify them in our kids early so that we can grow those talents and encourage them to use those talents that God gave them to benefit not only them, but the world. We need to work on what we eat, our diets, our nutrition, our understanding of our medical background, right? We got to understand that. We got to teach them economics. These are not hard things to do. And then
But I think that, like Philanda was saying, visuals, because I've said that too, Philanda. I've told Eddie, I was like, these visuals that we're putting out here, that's really helping it to hit home to make that connection. So I totally agree that, yeah, we do need that visual stimulus to help.
we got those things, Taylor. And the last thing we need to do is give them a group.
Yeah.
Give them a positive group or peer group or environment or community that can grow them. That is a very important factor that we often leave out. If you are around positive, spiritually knowledgeable people who want to grow and not fail, right? Consistently fail, will fail. You are going to be, by just being in that group, right? You go feel that I have to do something. I can't just sit here. Peer groups work both ways. We're getting involved too much with the negative and the fruitless, where we show it that are positive, that have resolved, and are going to fix things. And that's what I like to see with the young kids that went out there to go protest. But we got to direct them for what they need to do.
And we got to support them. We as the adults have to support them. We have to support them. I appreciate those three politicians, especially those two young black men, because they're young. I'm like, wow, y'all look like children yourselves. And y'all are representing us. Finally, people that look like us representing us. But we as the adults have to support them. Stop talking down to them. Stop teaching the status quo that was taught to us to them.
Yes.
Be outraged. Get into good trouble.
Be mad.
You can do this.
Yeah.
Be mad. Speak up for yourself. Far too many times, us as children, we were silenced. That's where what happens in the house stays in the house mentality came from. We were silent. We didn't want to believe the children. This uncle so-and-so did this. Oh, well, we don't talk about that. Just forget about it.
Yep.
Lift them up. Support them. We have to do better about doing that. If not, there won't be any of us around. We won't make it. These people who are making these laws, who are these NRA members, they are all going to die really soon. Let's just be honest. They're 50, 60, 70-year-olds. They ain't got that many more years. And yet they're trying to determine what happens for people who are in their 20s, who are in their teens. They won't be here. You got to keep in mind. Don't let these old people who are dying, they won't be here that much longer. Not in your churches, not in your legislature, not in these corporations that are on. Stop letting them dictating the rest of your life when they don't have a rest of their life. They are in their last moments trying to hold on to something.
And teach a new generation to take that hatred into a more generational curse and keep it moving forward.
I think about our grandbaby Layla, and Layla she has not been hindered by society. She has not been made toxic by society, nor our family trauma, nor anything that comes with being black or being a woman. And she just loves. She just loves.
That's
like we were in a gas station coming back from PA, me, her, and Jesse alone, and this white woman walked up there, and she was like, she is just so beautiful. Like literally, I feel like she's glowing. And Layla looked at her, and she walked up to the woman, and she gave her a hug. And that woman bust into tears. I don't know when the last time that woman had a hug. I don't know her story. Now,
she might have needed it. Yeah.
Right. at some point, unfortunately, I gotta have the conversation with her about how we don't touch and talk to strangers
Yeah.
for her safety, and I hate that. I hate that I have to that we as the parents and the grandparents have to teach her that she's not safe when she don't know that lifestyle. Ain't nothing happened to her. Sorry, I feel myself welling up. But we need to get
Yeah.
to the point where that doesn't have to be a conversation. Why we can't be like we came into this world? Why are all the fears and the trauma? Why isn't it okay for kids just to be kids? They should not have to be fighting for their right to be safe in school. They should just be children. And yet, we as the adults to get mad acting like you acting too grown. And we say stuff like that to them when we're forcing them to be grown and be accountable for stuff that they should not be concerned about because they're children.
They're children.
That's a fact. And I go ahead, because
Eric made
you
a
were saying
funny
something.
comment over there.
Oh yeah,
Well,
I'm responding to it right now.
we're taking more and more of their childhoods away from them. Unfortunately, in this society, we're having to go younger and younger and explain things because younger and younger they're being victimized, right?
They
And it's
are.
so unfortunate that we have to do that. You know, you got to explain to your 5-year-old, right, that nobody touches your private places, and to go even more in depth. And we have to the one thing that me and Tina have always agreed on is that you have to meet your child at level of understanding. If your child has an understanding and they show you they have that understanding, meet them at that level of understanding. Because if you, somebody else will, right? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, they might victimize them or hurt them in a way that will forever or for most of their life traumatize them.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So look, I hate to cut this portion of the conversation off, but because it is so fire and filled with so much energy and information. We've gone on a from we've hit a lot of branches in this segment. I promise you we have. We went from a commercial with sex and sex toys we to how we are
Look,
not
if Tina
able
don't
to.
mind, I would love to come back on here and let's really dive into repressed women's sexuality. Cause I swear, if I see one more Viagra commercial and we'll deal with women's intimacy issues, I'm
Well,
done with that. But anyway, sorry.
let me
It's
say
like
this.
they don't care about us. They don't care. We just
Viagra.
here. We
I
just here.
thought that Viagra was really for the woman and not the man.
I thought so too, but maybe I'm wrong. But whereas I love the idea of that.
Yes,
I'm gonna say
Yolanda, I love it
I don't
too.
know. I think you're gonna have to get on. I
I'll
think
be
you're
on
gonna
your
have to
show.
get on.
I ain't got a problem with
You
Tina.
got
We
you got to
do
get on her
this.
on Tina's show for that. The reason I say that is
Yeah, come
because
on, honey, because you know
with
we talk about adroit living, baby, and I'm on it. Come on.
because
Well, Jesse,
what
you
I
know,
feel like is with.
you could always
Go
come
ahead,
on our
sir.
show too, man. You could always come on our show too.
And I appreciate that. But the reason I would say that she would have to go on Tina's shows because I feel like with it being my podcast and all, I'm not going to be excluded from from the conversation.
We're not
And
excluding you. We just wanna talk about it.
No, I'm excluding me because there are certain topics that I feel like for the moment, women's voices need to be heard first.
I get you.
Yes, sir. I'm excluding me from that one. Because, like, so, and I'll say this and then we'll hit the break. So, what winds up happening is, aside from the fact that I have a domineering personality anyway, it's just when I start talking, I'm like that. Aside from that, take that aspect aside from it, right? Conversations about black women's sexuality, black women's health, things like that, have been dominated and spoken about from a male perspective for decades.
I
And
agree
so
with you,
why
Jesse.
would I insert myself in a conversation that I am not really authorized to insert myself in because I'm not a black woman?
There you go.
There are
Okay,
things
so
that y'all
I'm
can
gonna
talk
interject
about that I
here,
can't do.
And I'm answering your question, Jesse, because so many times we are compartmentalizing. I spoke against this earlier. We're compartmentalizing. So yeah, the shows between the four of us do very well in giving so much information that's usable because we're talking from a man woman perspective, but as a married couple, which is the presentation I mentioned earlier as well. And that's why it's appropriate because the presentation, because yes, it has both aspects and it's not compartmentalized, even though it's kind of, sectioned off, but it's still bringing her perspective, which is valuable, and your perspective, which is valuable, making the entire thing
T-
holistic
He didn't
and
say his
valuable.
perspective wasn't valuable. What he said, and I agree with him,
No,
is
I'm
that
not saying that. I'm saying that it's
no, it's
necessary.
that it's too
I
many
don't want the
there.
exclusion because it's necessary to have the inclusion. Like
Yeah, but
Yolanda
this the
said.
problem. This the problem, though. What he's trying to say, and just what I think he's trying to let you try to understand is that there are so many black men and men, period, who have stood on pulpits, stands everywhere, and told women how to live, how to dress, how to walk, how to talk, how to make love, how not to make love, how to be. They talk. They mansplain to a woman something that they ain't never had to live because they are not a woman. And this is the thing.
But you
I
know
don't
what the
want a
pulpit
woman,
don't have? It don't have what we doing right here. It don't
but I
have
don't want no
both of
woman
us
who go
together talking.
who wants to be what
But
a man wants
here's
her to be.
here's the thing, Miss Tina. It's yes, we need this where there is the both dynamic, but before the both dynamic can be valuable, the other half of the dynamic has to be made as valuable. And that can't happen until the other half of the dynamic is placed in a position where I only hear you and nothing else. I need to value what you say. I need to value your opinion. I need to value what you think about the matter because this is your body and your sexuality and your things. I need to value you first before I ever can insert myself. I'll ask it this way. How often do you hear conversations about male sexuality and women involved?
Um,
Exactly.
it's
It
different
happens,
people
but
out
it's
there
very
that do
rare.
it. But the matter of the fact is, change doesn't take place. Well, desirable change don't take place because of the compartmentalization. Whereas this thing that we're doing here is more relatable on both aspects because it's inclusive. And when you put an exclusion to it, it brings
You're
slower
not excluding, though.
understanding.
You're not
No.
excluding.
So what I'm saying is, we can all be on here. Philanda can elaborate on that aspect. And you guys, if you feel like you should be quiet at that moment, then be quiet at that moment. But the contribution needs to continue to be the same because we already have it where you got a woman in the pulpit and she talking about these things on Women's Sunday or Women's Month or Women's International History or whatever. So you do have it, but you don't have it where both parties are in the room because most oftentimes than not, I said it on my show where the lady wasn't supposed to be in the room when those conversations was happening because they call what they call it mixed company. You can't talk like that in mixed company. No, we need these mixed company conversations, and I think Philanda has an absolutely good point, and we should continue it on my show on Monday and try to dive deeper into it in the way that
Not me.
Philanda suggests.
And he said, not him. No, no. And I'll say, and I'll make this point, and I promise you, I'll leave it alone. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm literally saying is, before we can to me, before we can have that, it needs to be you all first. Because yes, we do have the women in the
Yes, and
pulpit
what
on the
I'm
Women's
saying is
International
it's
Day,
been
and
happening.
the women
It's been
on
happening
Women's
in
Day
the
and stuff like
pulpit
that.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but what I'm
It's been
saying is,
happening,
so
but
you
the
have it
guys
on
aren't
those
doing it.
days. I'm talking having it. If we're going to use the pulpit as the example, rather than have it on Women's Month and Women's Day and Women's International this, have it on a regular Sunday. Have it on Sunday, August 15th, where there's nothing special about the day, because then you can make it
Okay, so
normalized,
you gonna
and
give
so now
Philanda the
I can
pulpit
contribute.
on Sunday?
Falana knows she can get up and talk whenever she wants.
Hey,
By the way,
hey,
our services are on Saturdays. She running from it.
hey,
I've been trying to get her up.
hey, leave me out of that one.
Falana can have and my folk know she can have it whenever she get
He
ready.
keep trying to force me up there.
We had a time frame where she was up the third Saturday of every month, and it wasn't just it wasn't a special day. It was just this is the day that we're gonna have you up, and this gives you the time enough to learn how to prepare for it. I ain't trying to hog that place. It ain't for me. I want all voices to be heard as long as they're heard in context biblically accurately. That's why Sharice right there is who's a
Dying
member of ours.
laughing.
She dying laughing because she know this is what we talk about all the time. So like, but in terms of matters of womanhood and women's sexuality and the things that are important to a woman, I as a man am more comfortable first listening to what you have to say and digesting it apart from, because if I sit on this podcast or even on your podcast and I'm quiet, people who know me and who will look at the podcast because they know me, they'll wonder, why is Jesse not saying nothing? And I become a distraction.
I'm gonna point out some people that say it on a regular day. Shamore, I love her comedy, especially the chandelier and the unicorn. And another person that's constantly saying is Monique. A lot of people say she's controversial. Who else? What's that? Cheryl. She said she's constantly talking about it. Juanita Bynum. She has spoke about it. It's out here. So to say that it's
And so
not
you
being
have
said,
Cheryl Underwood, whose
it's not
platform is
being
limited.
included.
You have Monique, who was ostracized. You have you said some more, who hasn't really been heard from in a national platform since the '90s. She still does it. She still talks,
But
but
it's
she ain't
still
been
being
heard from since the
included.
'90s.
It's
Juanita
being
Bynum,
said.
who's been ostracized from the Christian community because she's gone crazy. But no, what I'm saying is you have those figures, but those figures, their voices have been diminished. And they've been diminished because oftentimes what they have been on trying to have these conversations is on male platforms or on platforms that
There you
become
go.
dominated by men. And so what I'm trying to do is give you first the platform to speak on what you need to speak with. And then when I come in, I'm no longer coming in as in terms of how society would look at it as a central figure. I'm coming in as a guest. And so rather than being the person who can help domineer the conversation, as a guest, I become an additive to it. But I can't become an additive to something if by position, just literally by position, my position is greater than yours. I have to get your position equal or greater than for so that when I come in, the focus isn't on me, I'm an additive. So
But you know who historically has done that? Oprah, Jenny Jones, the other. It's been a couple of people, especially
Okay,
from
okay.
Chicago,
You're
who
talking
have tried
about
to do that as women, but they still came back with the men
You're talking
domineering the
about
conversation.
you're talking about people who are controlled by patriarchy, right? That's the reality. They're still controlled by. You think that a woman can make billions of dollars by not acquiescing to these rich men? That's not possible in this country, not yet. I hope one day it could be, but it's not yet. What we're talking about here is patriarchy. We're talking about a male-dominated understanding of what a woman is. We don't need to be having that, right? Because we've already had that. You're naming all of these women who speak, but what about the Steve Harveys, the Kevin Samuels? What about the guys who get on the internet all throughout social media and tell you what a woman should do, what she can't do, how a woman should be, how she should feel, and that is not right. It's done from a male perspective, right? And then when you look at their actual life, right, that with the woman that they like, they ain't even acting like that. It's something to front. So we want
Kevin
some
Samuels
real,
died under a white prostitute. He need to quit.
yeah. We want some real. You need, in order to have that conversation, women need to be having that conversation, not led by men, not mitigated by men, right? And that's what I agree with Jesse. That needs to happen before a man even opens his mouth about it.
because
A
when
man
we
ain't,
do,
a man ain't. I ain't never seen no man listening to a woman, right? Say, yeah, that woman got up there and told me what to do with a man. Matter of fact, first thing come out of a man's mouth, how dare her sit there and tell me how to be a man?
because what happens when we get involved in the conversation, Roe v. Wade gets appealed. Bunch of men in a room having discussions
About body parts
women.
they don't have.
And so it would not have happened had women's voices been respected, uplifted, and heard. And you too, as black women, doubly so it needs to happen for you, because they'll respect a white woman's voice before they ever respect yours. So we have to uplift your voice first before we can ever get into the conversation. This is why I say, and I didn't say disrespect. I hope I didn't come off disrespectful, but I was saying it so that the conversation can be uplifted first and dominated by what you two as women and whoever else you have as a female on the program, what you all have experienced, what you all are gathering, what you all are dealing with, all of those things, your thoughts, your feelings, all of that. And then we as men listen, and what I'll do and what I want to do is then encourage others to take a listen, to just shut up and listen. And even if they're in the comments, if you go live, men, shut up, don't make a comment, and just listen. Let your presence be known. Come on real quick, say, hey, just here to listen and learn, and then shut up and learn, because too oftentimes we're doing too much talking. Men, we just talk way too much. And so we need to shut up and let y'all talk.
So in the spirit
And
of
that's
men
why
talk
it's a
too
good
much.
visual for y'all to be on, shutting up, listening to us. I'm just saying.
We're going to go ahead and take a commercial break on that one. We'll be right back after this last sponsor from Real Talk, and we're coming back with the infamous Real Talk Banter.
This is Real Talk. Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. Real Talk. This is Real Talk. Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. Real Talk. Real Talk.